Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 268 and we have a good one for you today. Today's fish is a fish that was actually requested by some of Ping's real life friends who just recently found out that I do this every Friday, and they have requested this video or this fish, and it's actually a really neat fish. No reason not to do it, and I'm happy to bring this fish to all of y'all. Today's fish that we're going to be talking about is, the Atlantic football fish. Now, the Atlantic football fish, or scientific name Hemantolophus grolandicus, again, that's Hemantolophus grolandicus. It is part of the family Hemantolophidae, which is the family of football fishes. Now, as you might have guessed from this picture, football fishes are just a group or a family of anglerfish. A lot of people are unaware that anglerfish are actually an extremely diverse group of organisms. There's tons of species of them ranging in all sorts of sizes. And in fact, we've talked about anglerfish in the past, but this one was specifically requested, so here we go. So the Atlantic football fish is found primarily in the North Atlantic and Arctic Ocean. It's most commonly known to be around Greenland, Iceland, Norway, and the British Isles. But they do extend southward throughout most of the Atlantic, and there are records of it that it might be actually in the Pacific. So the name might actually be a bit of a misnomer in that it's only found in the Atlantic. But the first specimen of this was caught off the Greenland coastline, which is why it has the scientific name, if you notice that, Grolandicus. Grolandicus actually just means in the land of Greenland, I believe, in Latin. So, super neat fish. Now, where you're going to find this is where it kind of goes. You probably understand, like a lot of anglerfish, and especially when people are thinking of anglerfish, this fish lives in deep sea environments, usually between 200 to 1,000 meters, but they can be found much deeper, around greater than 2,000 meters, or in imperial measurements, that's going to be around 600 feet to 3,000 some odd feet, but getting down to 6,000. So essentially, they want to go as deep as possible. And that's because they prefer those very cold, oxygen-rich, deep waters. Now, when you start talking about depths of that nature, you're not really finding them around habitat. They're kind of just around. When we talk about freshwater fish, if you notice, I always say, they prefer high mountain, clear water streams with high oxygenation and swift flowing, or slow moving backwaters with a lot of vegetation. When you start talking about extreme deep water fish, the anglerfish, the snailfish, things like that, these are fish that are they're just kind of down there, and they're just trying to essentially survive. But they don't have a lot of competition. That's why there are actually so many deep water fish. Oh, cat behind me. Yes, Daisy. Hello. So how do you know you have a football fish? Well, the football fish kind of has this globular body shape. It's not easy to get a picture of these because they are so deep water, but they kind of have this rounded, kind of compressed body shape. Someone saw this and like, that looks like a football. I don't know where they got that, and I'm assuming that they're actually meaning the soccer term football, not American football. That makes a little more sense, but I still do not see it. But hey, to each their own. But the football fish actually does have a rough texture to it. It's very leathery. I think that came into play as well. And it's actually covered in fairly small dermal spines. And that's actually fairly prevalent. They have an extremely well-developed lower jaw that protrudes below the snout, beyond the snout. They have developed spines along the sphenotic bone, which is the bone up here, which is one reason why I include this. So you can see here this ridge line, I believe, is going to be that sphenotic bone, and it's going to have spines throughout there. And they do have a lot of teeth, as most anglerfish do. We'll get into why they have so many teeth, but they got a lot of sharp, pointy feet. There's a reason why so many people think these are terrifying. They're not. They're really not. Now, in terms of size, like most anglerfish, the females are much, much larger than the males. Females are around 60 centimeters, which is around 24 inches, whereas the standard length for a male is around 4 centimeters, which is 1.6 inches. So males are extremely small compared to females. And if you know anything about anglerfish, there is a reason why that we'll get into this a little bit later. But anyway, going back to the description of the fish, they have these muscular lobed fins, so they're going to be rounded, but unlike a lot of other fish where the fin is almost coming directly from the body, they have almost little arms on there. And you can see it kind of here, you can see it here as well. It's almost got some body coming out and do that, and that's because this is actually a primitive fish. The more primitive a fish is, the more likely you're going to see that characteristic. But the way that people tell football fish, especially Atlantic football fish, is actually because of the esca, which is essentially the esca is going to be the antenna of the anglerfish. The esca of the Atlantic anglerfish is actually the length of this, especially the ilium. Elysium, and usually it's around 28 to 50% of the standard length of that, meaning these things can get extremely long, and they usually have these little tentacles that come out that are also there. I'm not too familiar with the esca morphology, but essentially this one is apparently extremely long, and that seems to be what differentiates it from not only other anglerfish, but even just football fish, that these little appendages can be so incredibly long, and they're surrounding this bulb. And I think the reason for this, and how I would interpret this, is a lot of squid and octopi are actually bioluminescent, and like most anglerfish, they do have, I believe they do actually have some bioluminescence in the bulb, which would be the kind of central end appendage there. And I think they kind of use those tentacles to wave to lure prey into their close, so where they can get there. And that's how a lot of anglerfish work. And that's actually why their mouth is so upturned. If you can, ignore that picture. See, it's so upturned is because that antenna is up here. They're attracting things up here in their eyesight, and then they can essentially shove their mouth forward and attack, essentially, or just swallow, really. And that's because it's an ambush predator. They're luring these fish in. I don't think anyone's surprised to know that an anglerfish are luring the fish in, but they have an expandable jaw and stomach that can swallow prey as almost as large as themselves. And that's why they have their eyes a little forward. They're looking constantly at their lure, and when something gets there, they're going to eat it. And because they are in the deep sea ocean, they have to essentially eat whatever they find. And that's why they actually have all these teeth here. You might think that's scary. They're destroying things. No, they have so many teeth, and we've talked about this so many times in the past. When fish have these small, mini conical teeth, it is not for shredding apart meat. These teeth are extremely bad for that. These teeth are designed to, once it gets a hold of you, you cannot escape. It will not let go. You know, it's essentially, they're just grabbing onto something, whatever it is that gets attracted, and they will not let go. And with how many punctures they can hold, it's impossible to get away from them. Now, in terms of the conservation status, this is not currently listed as threatened. It's classified as least concern. It's extremely rarely encountered, but it is fairly wide distributed. There's not many threats to this. Deep sea trawling bycatch would be the only like threat to this, but there's not too much. But for the interesting fact we're getting the video on, I was originally going to talk about the fact that it is the type specimen, meaning it was the first specimen described of this family. It's not just of this genus, they were the first specimen described of this family. And that's very important for scientific literature and taxonomic, classifications and things like that. And it is something that maybe I would encourage other people to go look at the taxonomy video. I believe we talked about type specimens. If we haven't, please let me know in the comments, and I'll probably do a video on that. Maybe a short YouTube short about that. But what I really, when I dove into this a little bit more, there was something that popped out to me that was really, really different. Now, most of you that are experienced with fish know that male anglerfish oftentimes look like this. They are just a little thing that its entire life cycle is to actually just attach to a female, and then they fuse with the female to live with the female completely, and they're parasitic. What's interesting about the Pacific football fish is that is not the case. The males look completely different. The males are actually have their eyes they're set far back on the sides of the head. They have their own anglers, but they actually have a very highly developed olfactory organ that helps them find females. And when they do find a female, they do actually attach just like other anglerfish. But they do not fuse with her to become parasitic. Essentially, when a male finds a female, the male attaches to the female using all those teeth, and it just attaches until the female releases her egg, and then the male releases his sperm to fertilize, but then the male lets go and swims away. And that's a relatively unique adaptation to anglerfish because it allows the male to breed with multiple females, but it means that the male actually has to survive on its own as well. So chances are the male are going to be eating smaller microorganisms and things like that while constantly trying to gather females. But that is such a unique and interesting adaptation that I'm going to be completely honest, I was unaware that there was an anglerfish species out there that didn't have a parasitic male to female. So at least for me, this was by far the most interesting fact about this fish. Really, really cool fish. Thank you so much to the people who requested it. I know they're going to be watching this, but thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you do. I'd really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. If you'd like to support the channel, please click the link down below. It is by no means expected, but very much appreciated. Regardless, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and peace.